Hey y'all, it's Will, your favorite podcast co-host here. I know you guys are used to Connor hopping in before the episode like this whenever we have like some late breaking news. This is kind of my version of that. I'm staying with family for the holiday, and for whatever reason, my podcast setup just would not cooperate here, so we had to keep kind of starting and stopping recording the pod. And so that being said, I kind of took over the editing part, and skipped a couple of different parts of it. So if it sounds like Connor's being rude or anything, I just basically cut to the next point. The audio, like the quality is not an issue or anything. Just wanted to kind of keep it moving along. So wanted to say definitely check out our great interview with Peter Burns that's here today. And please don't hold that against me. Hope you guys are having an incredible holiday season, and thank you guys for all that you give to us and for your continued listenership. And so without further ado, here's the pod.
Hey, what's going on? This is the Starting on South podcast. Subscribe to Starting on South on YouTube. I am Connor O'Gara. Will, early Merry Christmas to you. What is the acceptable time to stop working when Christmas falls on a Thursday?
In about an hour and a half.
Yep, that's fair. Yeah, we're recording this on Tuesday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Yeah, I think we might be past the day. Is it just all week? You could just take the week off, right? These next 2 weeks, nobody works these next 2 weeks except people in college football, right?
Yeah, it's so funny, like to talk to people who work retail or have to work during these times, and there's such a disconnect, especially in like modern
True.
America, where people have kind of like the work from home jobs, kind of like us. And it's such a blessing because I'll talk to some of my buddies and they're like, done for the year," and then some of my buddies are like, "Yo, I got a shift, dog."
Yeah, it is. It is a bit all over the place. I do feel like when it's on a Thursday, though, if it's anything midweek, you get the full week off because by the time Tuesday rolls around, like Laura and I are both working, up until tomorrow afternoon, essentially. But Claire's daycare, there's like nobody there right now. She's just kind of chilling with a couple of her
She's the
homies.
queen of the daycare. Oh my gosh, she could just build a little throne. She can have all the Hawaiian rolls they got. I'm sure she has extended playtime, extended nap time. What a time!
She didn't need daycare to clear out for that to be the case. Let's just say that. Yes.
She's always the queen.
Yes, she is. We have a great pod today. Great pod. Non-playoff SEC Bowls. Those are still happening. We're going to preview those. Plus, got to catch up with our guy, Peter Burns. And we will send everybody on their merry way with Lad of the Week. I'm just going to spoil mine. It's Robert Patrick Petrino, Will. It just is. We're going to talk about that later.
He can't stop winning. That's another king right there. It's just, you know what? He's going to be doing this till he's 102.
We should really do a Lad of the Year. He'd be in the running. He really would, man. Unbelievable. Okay, I want to do a disclaimer at the top. We are talking about bowl games with a ton of moving parts, obviously, with opt-outs, with transfer portal moves. We've got coaching changes. This is really, really fluid, okay? So this is not the same pod that we would do as recently as 3 years ago with the way that the calendar has set up. And for those at home who are watching these games with vested interest, maybe you're gambling on them or whatever, do not take every single thing that we say about personnel as gospel. Look at all of these, follow beat reporters and stuff like that. Action Network has a great tracker. That's what I'm using for a lot of this, to try and figure out if some of these guys are playing, not playing. And let's just do a preemptive are bad if we get some of these things factually incorrect. Okay? Is everybody good with that? All right, we got that out there.
Absolutely. And I'll say too, man, like I love bowl season. I've said this before. You're not going to find me as an analyst, digging deep and finding a lot of like deeper ongoing 2 and 3 year meetings here. Just as a reminder, we had Billy Napier smoke John Summerall in a bowl game. So I don't really think that what happens in bowl season is some indicator of future success, right? So we're gonna have a lot of fun with this, and that's kind of my overall takeaway is enjoy bowl season for what it is, right? Like I wouldn't get too deep into, does this mean our depth chart for next year? Like this is just a fun, silly podcast for a fun, silly season.
Last I checked, which was about a week and a half ago, John Summerall, Billy Napier, their Wikipedia pictures are both from the Gasparilla Bowl, wherein they faced each other. Ironic. Just a little bit.
The Gasparilla Bowl is a time. If you've never been to the Gasparilla Bowl, I'd actually recommend it. That is bowl season for you. It's like diet Mardi Gras. It's a great place to drink.
I haven't, actually. And I've done the RELIAQUEST Bowl. Outback Bowl, because Tampa, but I have not done that actually, and I think it's always because it's before Christmas, and I usually tell myself, or at least I did in the previous era of college football, that bowl season really doesn't start until after Christmas. So I think I've just been late to the game on that one. That's on me. I need to get to the Gasparilla at some point here. Well, let's start with the Gator Bowl. We have number 19 Virginia against Mizzou. Mizzou's a 4.5-point favorite. The over/under I have is 227 Ahmad Hardy rushing yards. Yeah, no big deal. That's a pretty specific number. It is the number that he needs to pass Bo Jackson and finish with the 5th best rushing season in SEC history. Worth noting, Bo's total in 1985, it was only 11 games. They didn't, for whatever reason, think bowl stats mattered, whatever. Hardy would be 13 games, so a bit of an asterisk with that. But also, maybe not an asterisk for Ahmad Hardy because he's got Matt Zollers as his starting quarterback after Bo Pribula hit the transfer portal. I don't remember who Bo Jackson's starting quarterback was in 1985. I should have looked that one up. I'm going to say he was, no offense to Matt Zollers, better than Matt Zollers at this stage of his career.
I think if these two teams played each other, there would be a very similar game of football. I think it would be a close game. If 2025 Mizzou and that version of Auburn played, it would be like mirrors of each other. Drake would have a firm handshake afterward. But yeah, that just goes to show, man, like a Bo Jackson record being beaten potentially by Ahmad Hardy, just getting the tread run off the tires in the Gator Bowl. What a fun time.
Yeah, I had the privilege of handing out Christmas gifts for every SEC team this year, which is something I do every year. You can check that out on SaturdayDownSouth.com on Thursday, Christmas. And I gave Mizzou a Ford Model T, just a car to match the era that the passing game is from. And the way that they are built, and very much built like probably some of those mid-'80s Auburn teams. If you go back and watch some of these games with Bo Jackson and Herschel Walker, and you see the loaded boxes that they had to face week in, week out, it's unbelievable. And I do think very much Virginia will have a similar game plan against one Ahmad Hardy, who just needs a casual 227 on the ground. Would not rule that out with him after the year that he has had. Big news from Mizzou that he is returning for 2026. It's still weird that we're getting these announcements coming out of this guy's re-signing, like Mario Craver's re-signing with Texas A&M, Jade Mayaba's re-signing with USC, Ahmad Hardy re-signing with Mizzou. As weird as that is, it is great news. You cannot take that stuff for granted, especially with running back, how fluid it's been with those running backs, trying to look for the best situation. And even if you're established, you could look for a better spot. Even if he only has 1,600 yards this season, which he's 40 yards away from doing that. I tried to find the times, Will, that an SEC team returned a 1,600-yard back. It's very few and far between. 5 instances of that. 2016 LSU, of course, got Leonard Fournette back. 2010 Bama returned Mark Ingram off his Heisman Trophy season. 2007 Arkansas got Darren McFadden back after what should have been his Heisman Trophy season. 1981 Georgia got Herschel Walker back after what should have been his Heisman Trophy season in 1980. And then 1978 LSU got Charles Alexander back. Herschel and McFadden were the only ones in that group who improved their production after their 1,600-yard season. The other 3 all regressed in a pretty significant way. We'll have time to decipher whether or not that's going to be the case for Mizzou, who has just had a really, really good offensive line, even when they have some key pieces to replace. He needs 120 rushing yards for this to be one of the top 10 SEC rushing seasons ever, which is pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. I mean, Alexander and Fournette were the only ones to come back after a better season than that, and both of them regressed for LSU. So that feels pessimistic.
Well, that just felt unnecessary. Okay, and they were worse, by the way, just so you remember.
Who had the worse, more bummer pre-draft season between Leonard Fournette and Jadeveon Clowney?
Probably Fournette because he was in the Heisman race. It's funny that you talked about stacked boxes because that was in the back of my mind. I will say this as a modern LSU fan, people could talk about like every time we talk about Mizzou, people just get like upset about it. I don't know why.
Really?
Yeah. People just want to discredit kind of the things that drink. People don't like drink. They want to discredit the things he's done. At the end of the day, as a 2025 LSU fan, right? Do not take for granted this type of running performance. Do not take for granted this amount of commitment and success at least one phase of the game. And they can't help that their quarterbacks have been hurt. Obviously, Purbulo is like in the portal. Like that's not things you can really control. So what they've been able to control on offense, I think is really special. So I'm sure a ton of people will hear that and roll their eyes and go, "Oh yeah, sure, the next Darren McFadden, the next Bo Jackson, the next Mark Ingram." But at the same time, it just kind of goes to show how rare it is, especially in the modern age, to have a true bell cow back, which is exactly what Hardy has been.
I'm going to have to do a deep dive on the amount of backs in college football history that have been as good through 2 seasons as Ahmad Hardy's been. And Adrian Peterson, somebody like that comes to mind where you're looking at a guy who's going to be really close to 3,000 rushing yards in his first 2 seasons before he's draft eligible, which is just insane. I mean, that is just remarkable. And he could have a big time showcase game. It will be interesting to see kind of how he performs with Kirby Moore off to Washington State, a move that plenty of Mizzou fans, I think, were like, hey, buddy, don't let the door hit you on the way out after it got off to such a great start there. And I think philosophically speaking, the move to bring in Kirby Moore, to have Drink hire an offensive play caller was widely supported. It was just one of those moves that by the end of year 3, you're like, all right, I think this offense needs something new. They're not necessarily maximizing some of the key areas that it feels like they should have an advantage in. Chip Lindsey is the new OC for Mizzou, but not for the bowl game. At least I don't think so. He's not going to be at Michigan for the bowl game, but he's not going to be at Mizzou. I don't know.
He just gets to take PTO. This guy's a king. Okay, we've heard a lot about, is this guy staying? Is this guy going? Will he coach the bowl game? Just being like, you know what? Deuces, I'm going to Hawaii. I love that.
He might be at this game. He might be at this. I never rule out anything, but Drink said they're gonna. I mean, this is ultimately gonna end with Drink calling plays. Who are we kidding? I mean, let's
Drink's
be
like,
honest.
oh
here.
no, please don't twist my arm and make me call plays. I hate it when they do that.
Yeah, no. Oh, this would be a real shame. Ryan Day is doing that in an actual playoff game with Brian Hartline, juggling duties between USF and his receivers coach obligations as well. And Ryan Day is doing that for a more meaningful game. But Drink very likely is going to be calling a whole bunch of plays for this one. Feels like we're going to get a whole lot of Ahmad Hardy, especially against a Virginia team that had playoff aspirations going into the ACC championship, but lost a 5-loss Duke, allowed James Madison to get in. You've heard all this. And they now have to tackle Ahmad Hardy and his 1,111 yards after first contact. Ironically enough, he's oddly 111 yards after first contact away from matching Omarion Hampton's total from last year, which was the best that any power conference back has had in the 2020s. I'm saying that Hardy does that in this one, but comes up maybe a little bit short of the 227 rushing yards that would be needed to reach 1985 Bo Jackson. I think Mizzou still wins this one. Fun, weird back and forth game, 35-28 shootout, especially with Josiah Trotter injured on the Mizzou side.
You saw me just cackling. I've just kind of like put all these pieces of this puzzle together where you go, hey, modern age of college football, everybody's soft, everybody's opting out, guys aren't coaching, and yet you have the one lone gladiator, and that's Drake calling his own plays with
Likely.
Ahmad Hardy, where it's like, hey, see, again, the reasons why people like don't like Drake are kind of the reasons why I like Drake, because that is such an apex troll move to just make somebody have a terrible day at the Gator Bowl and be like, yeah, we're gonna have 35 carries here. You gotta go tackle Ahmad Hardy. This is like playing Mizzou in October, buddy. Like, get ready to learn. Like, everybody's getting their bowl gifts, and like the DC on the other side is just like, I gotta stop Ahmad Hardy. Why are they making me do this? This isn't fair. Everybody else is getting greeted by Master Chief.
That sucks. That does suck. There is the possibility that Drink looks at the backfield and says, you know what? Maybe this doesn't need to be an empty the tank game for Ahmad Hardy, knowing that he's going to be the face of the offense next year, knowing that this would be a killer game to have him suffer an injury. He's been nails for you this year. He's been so durable, and having him get banged up in a game like this against Virginia, and then, maybe he's banged up in the spring and you've got a new offensive coordinator coming in and Chip Lindsey, and they're not able to like, there is a downside to this being an empty the tank game for Ahmad Hardy. I would still bank on him getting more like 25 carries in this one.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, the thing too, man, is that, so far, as you're going to keep hearing me say, right? Like the Virginia opt-outs like seem pretty small for a game, especially of this magnitude. Virginia was a team obviously that had really big aspirations this year after they beat FSU and everything. So I think this is actually going to be higher on the like watchability games. Maybe not what well, the amount of care. That's what we're trying to
Yeah.
measure here in bowl games. When you have like for instance, starting quarterbacks out. I don't think Mizzou ever really truly had a starting quarterback after about week 4 or 5. So I don't think that matters. But I don't think this is going to be slop in the negative sense. I think it's going to be a pretty cool, watchable game. I'll give it to Mizzou because again, who wants to hit in the Gator Bowl? Drink. That's it.
Beware of the mid-game opt-outs, Will. Always beware of that. If you're live betting this and you're watching the first quarter and it's Olay defense against Ahmad Hardy, yeah, just you've been warned. All right, Texas Bowl. LSU against number 21 Houston. Houston's a 3-point favorite. The over-under I have is 7 reminders that I still love Connor Wigman. I do. I never stopped loving him. Why would I? I actually got a new reason to love him this year. Nobody cares about my fantasy team, but our guy Emery, friend of the show, Nothing Finer Pod, he invited me to his college fantasy league this year, and I played in it. I won it, thanks in large part to Connor Wigman, basically starting him the whole latter half of the season. Like I started off with jockeying between Marcel Reed and Dante Moore, and then I was like, Connor Wigman's available right now. I should pick him up. And buddy, rode it to the championship. Wigman quietly had an excellent year for Willie Fritz. Really did. I mean, 32 total touchdowns, over 3,000 scrimmage yards, 644 rushing yards, 11 rushing scores. Only 2 power conference quarterbacks had more rushing touchdowns than him, and it was Mark Gronowski for Iowa and then fellow former Texas A&M quarterback Haynes King. Wigman's playing. He's coming back to Houston in 2026. LSU has struggled with mobile quarterbacks. I think Connor Wigman, you can say he checks that box, maybe not in the same way that one Marcel Reed does, but still, like he can move. I watched plenty of Connor Wigman this year, and he still has the ability to make people miss in the open field. He can kind of hit you for that quick 30, 40-yard gain if you leave him uncovered, man coverage or something like that, and you turn your back to him. I think this is a game that matters a lot to Houston. I really do. And not just because of the proximity, which they are benefiting greatly from. I don't think they're going to have Connor Wigman run the football 15 times in a game like this because you don't want to get your QB1 hurt for next year. But I think they'd like to have a 10-win season. I really think that would matter. Houston hasn't had a 10-win season as a power conference member since its days in the Southwest Conference, early 90s. So, that's something at least. You're trying to figure out what's this team playing for? What's that team playing for? Different, I think, to win 10 games in the Big 12 than doing so in Conference USA or the American or something like that. No disrespect, but we know LSU's already going to be without its 2 best defensive players, Whit Weeks, Mansour Delane. TBD on those other guys like Halsey and Harold Perkins. We'll wait and see how all that goes. But I think Wigman is not really an ideal matchup for an LSU defense that's going to have Blake Baker still. That's the good news, but perhaps not the full arsenal ready to go. So I'm picking Houston to win this one 28-13.
So LSU's going to get smoked in this game, but I've just been sitting here deciding how much I care. That's really what I've been looking at here. I'm not sure that LSU, at the best they were this season, was exactly better than this Houston team because of exactly what you just hit on, mobile quarterbacks, right? And Connor Wigman. Yeah, LSU is obviously in the middle of a massive transitional period. Big of Ole Miss to let Frank Wilson coach the bowl game. But that being said, Frank Wilson is on the Ole Miss staff. I mean, even like having a coach that's in the portal is kind of a new thing, right? Like, I don't know how many times we've seen a head coach, an interim head coach, already have accepted a job and like recruiting for that staff while coaching a meaningless bowl game like this. But that's happening here. And so, yeah, I mean, who's going to get the lads going? Not really sure. I really don't know those faces like you were talking about. Okay, the weeks. Although we still have a couple of weeks left over, but weeks.
Yeah, there's still a couple. They will never lack
out.
weeks.
Yeah, we'll have at least 1 week on the roster next year. So anyway, but yeah, that being said, like the dudes who you could kind of imagine giving the speeches about not staying up past curfew and like doing the right things the bowl week, I feel like they're just not going to be there. They're not going to be involved at least or like playing. So yeah, I think this is kind of a sim to the end of the season. It's going to be a very funny beginning of the DVD for the Lane Kiffin era, just like with Brian Kelly, where there was that ugly loss to Kansas State, where they're playing a wide receiver at quarterback.
John Trey Kirkland, man.
Oh yeah, John Trey is like an LSU legend.
He had 3 touchdown passes in that game.
Yeah,
Will.
he did.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
that's wild.
Listen, if you want me to sound like a boomer, I'll start talking about John Trey Kirkland because look, kids don't care about the game anymore, Connor. All right, back in the day, we had a wide receiver that lined up at quarterback because he loved LSU. Now these kids today, no, just kidding. So that being said, man, like I think that there's going to be some Ole defense. I think that it's going to be an amazing day for Ole Miss Twitter. Like genuinely, I'm excited for the jokes that are going to come out because with Ole Miss, like with Ole Miss like playing in the Sugar Bowl and LSU probably getting smoked by Houston and Ole Miss stealing their coach, like it's going to be open season at LSU. So I'm probably just going to pretend this game isn't happening. To answer your question, I would bet on Houston in this game if I was betting.
Should I have set the over under at 39 scholarship players for LSU?
Well, it'll be over that, and that just kind of
Yeah.
again goes to show how bad things were when Kelly got there.
Yeah. Weird that the last time that LSU had a coaching change, also playing in the Texas Bowl. That's just where LSU ends up. The proximity to it kind of makes a lot of sense, but I think this will have a different feel than the John Trey Kirkland game, which it's not quite what Phillip Rivers is doing in the NFL, but man, 3 touchdown passes in a game for a wide receiver, that is the stuff of legend. There was probably at one point a joke that you could make about the amount of quarterbacks at LSU that have had a 3 touchdown game throwing the football.
This is
And
unnecessary. Why would you
sorry,
do
all right,
this?
you know what? You're right. You're right, Will. You're right, Will. This game is going to be kind of a dud. The only thing that's going to be able to save it is like an in-game interview from Kiffin. That's it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's gonna be live tweeting that. Like they're gonna be down 20.
he'll
He's
be
gonna be like,
there,
great
right?
hit. I mean, I guess I don't know what that man does on a daily basis. Every time I see him, it shocks me what he's doing. They tweeted a video with Ole Miss's running backs coaching it the other day after right before they signed him. So wherever he is, he might be at the spa during the game. But yeah, man, one thing that's gonna be pretty interesting in this game, though. I mean, I appreciate the Action Network for not including all the opt outs that LSU has had because there are dudes on like you know me, I'm pretty down to the college football, the LSU specifically. There are 2 or 3 dudes that have opted out. I'm like, you were on the roster? Like, it's like we saw that guy for the Chiefs start the other day, and it's like, how long have you been here? And so that being said, I wonder who's going to get quarterback reps in the second half. And last I checked, LSU has like 2 running backs on the roster that haven't opted out, and one of them's Harlan Berry, who they're still kind of working with after the running backs coach is now going to Ole Miss. So there's going to be some freaky personnel in. So I think if you're kind of a college football sicko, watching some wide receivers play quarterback, maybe. I mean, it's happened before with this LSU team. So there you go.
Harlan Berry's going to get a lot of work. Got double-digit carries in each of the 4 games after Frank Wilson took over. The 5-star freshman would expect probably to see a lot of him. I don't know what his props are. Probably would take the over on that. Maybe a little Wild Berry. That was a Pop-Tarts reference for the folks. Yeah. I'm basically a
I
Pop-Tarts
wasn't prepared for the
influencer
wild
now.
berry. I started drinking coffee. I was like, no way.
Yeah.
He just said wild berry.
Yeah. All right. Music City Bowl. Tennessee, 2.5-point favorite against Illinois. The over-under I have is 1 SEC-related troll or fight, maybe combination of both, involving Brett Bielema. Yes, last year, Bert, very virally, that's a word, trolled Beamer, and that led to, do we call it a full-on fight? 2 coaches being separated.
That's a good phrasing. 2 coaches being separated because they were.
Tussle, a tiff,
Dust
a
up.
beef,
Yeah.
dust up, something like that. All the above. I think it's a bit tougher to get under Josh Heupel's skin than Shane Beamer based on the way that they're wired. Don't see it happen very often, but worth noting, Heupel has been his most wound up version of himself in bowl games. The 2 bowl games that he started his time at Tennessee, he had the forward progress play against Purdue that first year, which was very controversial. Tennessee fans were very, very upset. I'm old enough to remember when Tennessee staying at 7 wins instead of getting to that 8th win with a bowl win against Purdue was really upsetting, and it fueled a lot of offseason discussion. And then the next year, they had the unsportsmanlike flag in the Orange Bowl against Clemson. It was on a
The
Joe
Orange
Milton
Bowl. TM. The most Orange Bowl.
This is also maybe the most Orange Bowl. Very, very orange. It will be in the Music City Bowl. I would love to see if Bielema can try and push Josh Heupel's buttons. I don't know how realistic that is. Illinois could be close to full strength, not Tennessee. Vols won't have McCoy, Carter, Brazel's not playing, Kitzelman, Gibson. I mean, that's 5 of their best players when healthy. Of course, Tennessee hasn't exactly been healthy this year. We know that Tim Banks, the DC, has already been fired. Jim Knowles has been hired. He's going to have an interim DC situation for this one. Both of these teams, though, in addition to sharing the color orange in a very loud way, they've just had these hollow 8-4 seasons. Really, really hollow. Tennessee did not have a win against an FBS team with a winning record. The FBS teams that they beat are a combined 27-62. Think about that. Their best win is at Mississippi State, in a game that they probably shouldn't have won.
That's nuts, man. Yeah, I feel like, again, and we talked about this. I don't want to do this whole thing, but like the schedule the last couple of years has been so nuts because it really does feel like there are two types of schedules. It feels like you have your Florida schedule, and then you have like your A&M/Mizzou/Tennessee schedule. And it's like, how do you end up with that many wins with beating no one good in the SEC? I've never seen this before.
To be fair, they also like their losses. They still had to face good teams.
That's a good point. They just lost to all the good teams. It's just
Yeah.
weird, like dispersing the mid-tier teams is where I'm getting at there, because some of those mid-tier teams were just like, you had this weird like a dispersion, you know?
Maybe the Kentucky win you consider better. I don't know.
The Kentucky win's got to be better considering that they were hot. Okay?
Yeah, they at least deserve to win that game too. Well, yeah, I mean Kentucky kind of found its footing after that game. But yeah, I mean, we're talking about beating 5 and 7 teams ultimately here. Illinois had a hollow season to get to 8-4, less hollow than Tennessee, just because they at least had a fun month of September where they got the win against USC. They beat ACC champ Duke, a game that kind of got away from Duke in the fourth quarter. But both of those things happened in September. After that, no victories for Illinois against winning teams, and they had 3 blowout losses. So kind of similar. It turned into a kind of similar team to Tennessee. But I don't know. I tend to think that Bielema gets the troops ready to go. It just means more for Burt to be able to beat the SEC. I'm picking Illinois to win a shootout. It feels like every Tennessee game these days, just a shootout with the way that their defense has turned out this year. I would imagine they're going to have more opt-outs for this one. I think Illinois is going to have more opt-outs as well. So I'm picking Illinois to win this one 35-31.
Well, first off, I think the number one priority for Bird, right, is you got to get the tarp off early, right? I mean, you got to establish dominance in this game of Chungus's.
It's more of a post-game deal with him. That's more of a he's not going to do that pregame. And I wouldn't blame him because you can't take your shirt off before a game and lose.
Yeah, I mean, but see, that's the thing. I think that both of them can be very intense. And I think he's got to be the alpha. He's got to just walk up to Heupel and be like, "Hey, I'm the elder statesman here. I've been doing this a minute." But no, that being said, like,
wait, Will. Speaking of that, do you realize if Bielema joined the SEC, that he would be the oldest coach in the SEC?
That makes sense. He's like kind of getting on up there, right? How old is Bielema?
55.
Oh my gosh, Bielema is a workman's 55. He's a plowman's 55. You could have convinced me he was about 64.
Really?
Yeah, he's just kind of, he's been around for a while.
True.
I guess he was kind of like the young hot guy at Wisconsin because, dude, that was 15 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, he was late 30s when he got that job.
That's kind of crazy looking back.
Yeah.
That's like a super young head coach for Wisconsin. And hey, that worked out. So let's try Luke Fickell. Anyway, so that being said, man, this Heupel offense, or how about this? This Heupel team, this one is actually perfect for a bowl game, right? Because the offense gets on and off the field, and the defense is Olay anyway. So you really cannot get much worse than Tennessee's defense was when it was locked in this year. And so what do you want in a bowl game? You want a lot of scoring. You want players to get reps. You want, to see good film on guys. You want social media highlights. I think that's exactly what Tennessee will give you because their offense is built to take shots. They have to do that. You can get some, guys going in the run game. And on the other end, you can't really do worse than they did against Kentucky, kind of like we were hitting on. So I think this is, if you could sign me up for like an all-time bowl team, this version of Tennessee with Aguilar would be sick.
Yeah, I mean, it could turn into a shootout with Luke Altmaier as well. Never stop believing in Luke Altmaier, the former Ole Miss quarterback, who I thought at one point was going to beat out Jackson Dart. Not necessarily in the cards, but this game lacks a little juice. Let's be honest. It lacks a little bit of juice. Vols at least get the benefit of having the easy trip for their fans, be able to travel, 3 hours drive from Knoxville to Nashville. Positioned pretty well. If you want to make a day of it, you could probably spin that a little bit. We were talking earlier about what's the protocol for taking the week off and just blending it into the holiday. So in theory, you could start your New Year's Eve early because this is on the 30th. You have a 4:30 Central Time start, so you can wake up in Knoxville, drive to Nashville, tailgate. If you have enough left in the tank after this game, you go out after in Nashville. Maybe Tennessee fans can like run into the Pavia brothers or something, although they're probably going to already be in Tampa, doing Tampa things.
They've been in Tampa.
They've mentally been in Tampa for a long time. Will
Mentally, they stay in Tampa. Exactly.
many? No, we won't go there. We won't go down that road. But nonetheless, there should be a home field advantage with a lot of orange, even if it doesn't necessarily look like it because of Illinois.
Yeah, it's interesting to see because, like, to your point, like, I don't know, man. Like, I do feel like these, if you would draft coaches to not to care about meaningless bowl games, I think both of these guys would be in the top five.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, when has Tennessee just not cared about a bowl game? That someone is going to make a joke. Well, they didn't care about the college football playoff last year against Ohio State. They care. They just did not have the horses to be able to hang with the Buckeyes. But year one, they cared. Year two, after the way that it played out, 10-2 season before the expanded playoff, and Joe Milton gave us a fun game against Clemson, and they had their backups playing really well, and they seemed motivated in a New Year's Six non-playoff bowl game. And then Nico was brilliant in that game against Iowa, against a really good Iowa defense in the Citrus Bowl. I mean,
That was the
I thought
best
he
game
played
of his
well.
life. Honestly, I don't think it may never get better than it was in that Iowa game. We thought he was the next coming of like T. Martin.
Yeah. So look, you're right. They have gotten up for these games. So maybe I'll be cold takes on that. But Bielema beating an SEC team. Like I remember being there for the RELIAQUEST Bowl when Illinois lost to Mississippi State. And Burt was like legit upset. He was really upset. He's like, I mean, losing to Mississippi State, who won 9 games that year. It was the first game of the post Mike Leach era. And that was a very dejected Burt. So I think he kind of goes all in for these SEC games.
Yeah, I don't know why you said this would be a letdown. This is another one that I think is going to be very high stakes with the quarterbacks playing. Like, I think that this
High
is
stakes.
I mean, well, in terms of dude, they Bielema almost fought Beamer last year over what? Over somebody standing in T-pose. I mean, like, you gotta be locked in. I think both of these teams' bowl games. So the fact that they're playing against each other is like kind of a dream for the Music City Bowl. I think there's a worth checking out and the not worth checking out. Don't check out LSU. Check this out.
Okay. I like that. You talked me into it. RELIAQUEST Bowl. Speaking of that, speaking of the Pavia brothers, number 23, Iowa, number 14, Vandy. Vandy's a 5.5 point favorite. The over-under I have is 3 mentions of what Vandy could have done in the playoff. We'll get some of that on the broadcast. Clark Lee is not going to go the Lane Kiffin route of saying after a non-playoff bowl game that it wanted to make a statement to the selection committee. Diego Pavia likely will. Who are we kidding?
Yeah. Wow, that loser Lane Kiffin. Oh wait, just kidding. That winner Lane Kiffin. I love everything he does in the media. Oh no, again, better than Brad Kelly, folks. No, this is gonna be a man. Again, that's another nightmare because remember, this is vibes of remember the Birmingham Bowl last year.
Yeah, this is very much that. I think similar Georgia Tech and Iowa, similar to that type of atmosphere that their coaches cultivate ultimately. I think it's the last game of Diego Pavia's career. I think. Never rule it out at this stage. I need to see Diego Pavia working a day job for me to think that that is actually the end of his college career. And maybe not even that. I really wouldn't rule it out at this point.
So wait, if I had to give you if you had to set the market, if you had to set the odds on Diego Pavia's next career move, what do you think it is?
CFL? Is that crazy? Is that disrespectful to say that?
Well, like that's the thing. It just depends on how much guys love ball. Because like the Hefty Lefty was playing for the River Monsters, right? Like there will be a football team that will take you. My question is, he's kind of so marketable that at what point? I think the CFL is the line, right? Like, does he try XFL? He would be ready made for that.
UFL now.
Oh yeah, remember, UFL.
Yeah, the that market would make sense. I don't know that would be. I think he would go CFL first, and then potentially something like that. But yeah, I don't know what those conversations are going to be like with NFL front offices who have said time and time again, we don't want our backup quarterback to be someone that brings extra attention and blah, blah, blah. And that could work against Diego Pavia, which is exactly why you definitely shouldn't say the thing that he said on social media after not winning the Heisman Trophy.
He's like anti-Tim Tebow, bro. He's like anti-Tim Tebow. Remember when Tim Tebow was like on the Jags and they were like, he's a locker room distraction. We can't have him here, whatever. Nobody wants to bring him in. Pavia is like the opposite of that. He's got like the stunner shades on, like ice. And it's like, brother, you're third string.
But he would still have many people talking to him. There's no doubt about that. So we will indeed very likely see Diego Pavia. I think it'd be stunning if he opted out of this one. I'll be on record saying that. Maybe I'll get cold taked. Eli Stowers, he opted out of this one. That's tough for Pavia. We know how much Stowers has been relied on the last 2 years. I mean, just at Vandy, Lord knows he relied on him before that at New Mexico State. But if this is a leave it all on the field game for Diego Pavia, that's really troubling for Iowa. Really troubling. Iowa kind of struggled against the run this year. They were 23rd in rushing yards per game allowed, which is fine. But 3 times in the latter half of the season, they allowed at least 170 rushing yards. They led up 231 to that Emmett Johnson, Nebraska ground game, which was a very one-dimensional offense. Now, Iowa still won that game going away, but Emmett Johnson was getting big chunks of yardage. Again, another guy on my fantasy team that nobody cares about. But that was not necessarily a vintage Iowa run defense. And I know that they are always going to be really good in the trenches. They just won the Joe Moore Award, but they have had issues this year, and that's why they're ultimately playing in this game, and they weren't competing for a college football playoff spot. The
Well,
good
look,
news
Kirk
for
Ferentz was right. This is why he didn't want to fire his son. All right, you got to play complementary football. Suddenly, you get an offensive coordinator in there, and the defense falls apart.
what did Brian Ferentz do this year, Will? Can you Google that real quick?
I'm
What
on
did
it.
Brian
Keep
Ferentz
going.
do?
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was an analyst at Maryland at one point. I'm filibustering here. That's okay. The people can wait for Brian Ferentz updates. He was definitely, I think, like
Tight ends coach at Fresno State.
okay. I was gonna say tight ends coach at like an even smaller school than
Oh,
Fresno
I'm
State.
sorry. What were you gonna guess?
I was gonna say that it was at an FCS school. And I didn't have like a specific one in mind, but I thought I remembered it being like, oh, he's a position coach at an FCS school.
Youngstown State would have been fitting.
Oh, Youngstown State would have been so good, Will. How did he not end up there? Mistake. Big time mistake. Brian Ferentz will not be calling plays in this game, fortunately, for Iowa. They could score a little bit. That's the good news for having a run defense that isn't necessarily as lock solid as what that raw number would probably suggest. Probably not going to have a ton of Iowa opt-outs in this one. At least that's what Kirk Ferentz is saying. The bad news is that I think full strength Iowa is probably still going to struggle against full strength Diego Pavia. We saw what he looked like with extra rest in that Georgia Tech game last year, and Pavia was on one to end the season this year in every possible way. So I'm going to say that Diego Pavia just gives one little middle finger to the rest of the college football world, and I'm going Vandy to win this one 28-17.
Yeah, I think like you would kind of just have to it's like taking the under, right? Like, why wouldn't you take Vandy in this game with like with minus 5.5, right? Because at the end of the day, like you're right, we've already seen him in a bowl game like that. We talked about the Birmingham Bowl. I think there's going to be plenty of like opportunity for camera time. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of like Boz-esque, right? Like he has the ability to like send a message, and I think that in these games, that's what this regime of Vandy has been so good at, is not losing focus and kind of. I mean, I hate to say that like Tennessee was like that, but it kind of was. Like it's like kind of at the end of the game, they just kept running it up. Like they don't take their foot off the gas ever. And so I think that's what they've been known for. So it gets a team like Iowa that what they struggle at is funny enough, like what Vandy is great at, running the ball, making you make decisions, especially in a bowl game. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I could just see Ferentz being like, see, this team's suddenly soft. This team suddenly, we got to hit guys. We got to go back to we got more fullbacks. We got to get more fullbacks. And Diego Fabi is going to be the one that sends them into that by just making them look soft for a full 60 minutes.
What do you think Kirk Ferentz and Diego Pavia would talk about if they had lunch together?
Man, that's a great question. They probably I feel like they've probably had coaches in common because they've both been in the game for 30 years.
That's a good
So
point. That's a good point.
I think it's probably like, oh yeah, you recruited like my cousin or my buddy, and like, oh yeah, back in 1994, remember when this happened? Like, oh yeah, you ever listen to Creed? Like, I mean, they're closer in age, I feel, than him and most college football players. They have a ton to talk about.
That's true. That's a good point. And sometimes, look, opposites attract. Clark Lee is kind of wired in a Kirk Ferentz type way, and those two have been able to make things work. Maybe Clark Lee will be this generation's version of Kirk Ferentz. I realized Kirk Ferentz didn't go to Iowa. It just kind of feels like it at this point. He actually went to UConn, but it is kind of, he does kind of fit that mold. And if we're able to get through a coaching carousel like this and Clark Lee isn't scooped up by somewhere else, then one would think that if he's able to build on the success of the New Mexico State migration to Vandy, then he could be locked into that job for a very long time. He just got a new deal, of course, but I was kind of thinking about this too. We talked about the age of coaches earlier. Does it feel like Kirk Ferentz is the last of this generation of coach, the last like true boomer head coach, where he took over at a time in which the main audience was boomers, and he has transitioned into this time in which all of his peers, at least that are in the same sort of demo, if they were to run a 5K together, have gone their separate ways. Like Kyle Whittingham just resigned. Brian Kelly got fired. Mark Stoops is technically 3 years too young to be a boomer. I think you have to be born in 64, and Stoops was born in 67. I guess Signetti and Belichick, they're still around. So technically there are boomers.
Belichick was like, he's like in a whole different bracket. Like, I'm sure those guys have some stuff. They would just be growling at each other. Actually, they would get along great. But Belichick is such a funny addition because as everybody is getting younger, yep, Belichick is coaching now.
He is. So just last of a dying breed. Last of a dying breed. Certainly no boomers in the SEC. Venables is the oldest coach in the SEC. Yeah.
That note about Burt is crazy, man. It truly is. Like, that's why I was kind of like looking around thinking, because those regular guys that you kind of bring up are all gone, and it's crazy to really think about, like, when it hits you in the face, like, yeah, Kirk Ferentz is it. And by the way, there's an easy answer to the question that you asked me earlier. What do they talk about? Because I think that Kirk Ferentz would see Diego Pavia kind of like that red Mustang, kind of like when he goes to the dealership to get his kids something, he sees it. I bet he just walks over to Pavia. He goes, hey, wish I had a guy like you on my team. And I bet he says that, not really meaning it, like not really ready to sell it or invest in it or like ever go get one. But I think in the back of his mind, he'd be like, hey, you got a little bit of bleep to you. I like you a little bit.
Look, Clark Lee sold Diego Pavia. There's some commonality there to be had, right? They saw eye to eye in some sort of way, okay? Because otherwise, there's no way that someone like Diego Pavia ends up at Vandy. Just simple as that. Just wouldn't have happened. But Clark Lee was in his corner. Not saying that he supported everything that came out of his mouth, but you get it. So one final game for Diego Pavia. Got to be locked in for that one. All right, Citrus Bowl. Number 18, Michigan. God, this game is weird. Number 13, Texas. Texas is 7.5-point favorite. The over-under I have is 0.5 sleeves for Michigan coach Biff Poggi. Maybe.
No, that's a chungus.
Big time. Big time. I shouldn't have said, I realized I just said boomer coaches were kind of on the way out, and Biff is 65 years old. He cuts off his sleeves even more than Belichick does. He's a young 65, though, a very young 65, old enough to be Sharon Moore's dad. Sharon Moore, of course, did not opt out of this game. He
self-opted out.
Yeah. Michigan decided after losing to Ohio State that Sharon Moore was not fit to be Michigan's head coach. Maybe this is an audition for Biff. I think it sounds like it is. He's taking it as that. And I know this is disrespectful to say to someone that means a lot to a lot of different college football fans. Andy Staples is a huge Biff Poggi fan. Biff Poggi gives me some Brady Hoke interim Tennessee vibes. That's mean, but it's true. It's very mean. Remember when Brady Hoke sent an all caps text to John Curry making his case for why he should replace Butch Jones at Tennessee? I will never forget that, ever.
You know what, man? You got me really on this like tear about these boomer coaches, and it's almost like the guys that are left are like caricatures. It's not like we have like regular dudes that want to hang out with. It's like the most boomery coaches. And this is a great example of that. This is a guy that like his cell phone right now is probably just buzzing with all kinds of notifications. He's got like Outlook not set up. Things are like, it just says forgot password when you click on his phone.
I have no idea if Chip Lindsey is going to be there for the bowl game. I don't think he's going to be calling plays for Michigan. That's just a guess. I really don't have the slightest clue. Does anybody have any clue what's going on at Michigan these days?
No. I mean, I don't even think that they internally it feels like this is the documentary we need to see, honestly, is just Michigan football. And that actually I feel like is something I feel like no one is talking about where all they wanted to do was close the book on everything that happened, and what this is doing is just extending it. Because there's gonna be now, like, they made the fake, like, fan service Connor Stallions doc where he's basically like, "Okay, and now what? What are you gonna do about it?" Now there are real crimes being committed here, and so, like, there's gonna need to be lots of investigation into exactly what happened during not only this era, but Jim Harbaugh's time at Michigan. I can't wait.
Biff is going to get this job. That's my prediction. He's going to get this job. I don't think it'll necessarily be the byproduct of this game, but yeah, this is a Michigan team that's just entirely in flux, and their offense was pretty bad this year. And it's going to be going against, ironically enough, a Texas defense that is also kind of in flux right now. No PK after he was fired, and Will Muschamp was hired. So you're going to have an interim DC. No Michael Taft, no Anthony Hill Jr. I think 7 defensive starters for Texas are going to be out for this game, which is the only reason that point spread is Texas minus 7.5. But what's the biggest strength in this game? It's Arch Manning. It's Arch. And yes, he's going against a good Michigan defense, but this is a huge opportunity for him to be able to kind of fuel that offseason discussion and build off of what was a nice finish to the season. It wasn't a perfect finish to the season because the Georgia game still happened, but it's another opportunity for Sark to try and show the world that he should be the one calling plays. I don't think he will take that lightly. You don't have DeAndre Moore. You don't have CJ Baxter. Both those guys hit the portal, but still plenty of meat left on that offensive bone. I think that maybe it's just lazy analysis to say, Texas and that offense is the biggest strength in this game, and Michigan's kind of a mess right now. But I have a hard time seeing the Wolverines rally after what's just been a bizarre few weeks. So I'm going Texas to win big. I'm going Texas 35, Michigan 14.
Connor, how do you think Coach Boom spends this week?
Probably, he's probably doing a lot of work behind the scenes at Texas, if I had to guess. You're probably trying to evaluate the portal. You're going to have a lot of pieces to replace on that side of the ball. So I would imagine he's already doing some evaluation there. There are schematic things that he has very likely stayed on top of, even as he's been in this, behind the scenes role at Georgia. I think that he has been doing plenty of very Boom-like things. He tweeted a few weeks ago, first time being able to enjoy Thanksgiving with my family. So maybe he's getting a final dose of that. But I would imagine Muschamp is doing plenty of work, even if he is not on the field, locked in, sweating bullets, calling plays.
Honestly, as far as a football life, I think he's kind of an underrated guy because I feel like a lot of the things that have happened to him that are negative of like of his own doing, like choosing your own destiny type stuff. It's hard to say he's ever really gotten a raw deal, and so I feel like that's a guy that I would love to just follow around for a day or for his career. But yeah, that being said, I feel like the tide had kind of turned on Arch as the year went on. Is that fair to say? Like I feel like Arch started hot, completely cratered, and then started to
It hit
kind
a
of
point.
yeah.
It hit like a low point,
Hmm.
and then he started to build it back up. And then by like mid-November and going into that A&M game, there were people that were like, all right, he is actually showing these signs of improvement. What a crazy thought that someone that is starting for the first time had a rough start, and then eventually by season's end he got better and
Hmm.
showed promise, but it still wasn't necessarily the second coming of Tim Tebow playing quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, him finishing with kind of a mid-season is the funniest outcome imaginable. Like I always talk about, where it's up, down, middle, but never really like consistent. That being said, man, I thought we were all kind of on one page about that. I saw like a pretty big name the other day saying that they would take John Mateer over him, and that blows my mind at this
Who was
point.
the big name, Will? Who was the big name?
That was Michael Wayne Bratton.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't get that personally, just based on the amount of progress that Arch has made over the years and over the year, and the fact that he has such a higher ceiling. I'm not saying that Mateer is a bad player, and I've really like given Mateer credit for all of the big wins and the big things he's done at OU. But I just feel like as far as a ceiling, especially within that Texas offense that lost a lot coming into the year. I mean, it just feels like this is kind of a floor for the Texas offense with Arch Manning. So that's where I'm at. I really want to buy low on Arch. I really thought that it was kind of a like the ship had sailed. There weren't really people on the island still saying that Arch was like underrated or that he was basura, but it's still out there. So if it's still out there, I'm going to take it. I think that Arch is going to use this game as kind of a springboard. And again, kind of a bad matchup no matter what, because Michigan, say what you will about like all the other stuff, but they have been a great defense even past all of the scandal stuff. I mean, look at Alabama in the bowl game last year, right? Look at Ohio State last year. So at the end of the day, like that is a team that has had pride on defense. And so I think that if Arch has a strong game here in this game, it would be a great launching point for next year, and then the hype machine would really start.
His biggest games have not come against premier opponents. They got the win against Oklahoma. He had a few nice drives in that game. It still was not, oh my God, look at Arch Manning. He's totally figured it out. This is dominant. Against the premier, more traditional powers in college football, he has not looked good. And does that matter in the evaluation process? No, but it does shape some perception. It just kind of does. If he had come out and looked great against Ohio State, then obviously the hype train would have ramped up, impossibly so. It ends up being an Ohio State defense that's lights out, and it's not necessarily a surprise that Arch struggled in that atmosphere against a defense that good. I think that the Florida game, if you come out and silence a crowd like that, even in the midst of a lost season for Florida, it kind of speaks volumes about where your headspace is at and your ability to go into that atmosphere and win a big time game. He has struggled in those types of settings. And you get an opportunity against Michigan, whatever Michigan's going to be in this game. I have no idea, to at least get some of the, I haven't really watched a lot of the close up, I wasn't watching Arch against Mississippi State, or I wasn't watching what Arch did in this game. And yes, you had the regular season finale against Texas A&M. That was a spotlight game for Arch. But at the same time, how much now do you find yourself going, I think that he's actually building, and I think he's getting better. This is an opportunity for people to kind of see that on that stage. So I do think it matters for him. I think it matters for Sark probably maybe as much as anybody.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of a dream in my mind to be that launching board for Texas next year. I'm like, hey man, take it from me. Having a defense, with a big logo with a lot of pride, but having a lot of opt outs and a lot of coaching transition, you can get on some very funny highlight tapes. And so I think that this is like the opportunity to play. It's kind of like the opposite of a scrappy smaller brand who like has
Yeah.
something to prove. It's like, well, you get to beat the Michigan logo without the Michigan roster, without more. And again, I know it's the offensive side of the ball, but losing Lindsey matters too. So it's just like I really do think this could be kind of a looking like a masterclass for Arch Manning, or at least a solid, good game kind of to build on. And not what DJ Lagway did last year, right? Like something that is like that was kind of an early warning sign for me. I was like, well, this is a game that you should really be cooking in, right? And so because of the talent disparity and all that. So Michigan has not been, post 23 really a talent warehouse. Like they bring in some good guys. Don't get me wrong. Like they get the Underwoods, they get like, Justin Taye's obviously not playing anymore, but like he like getting some of those guys here and there. But that being said, like it's not like it's even a Ohio State or a Bama, like one of those teams where their backups of backups of backups are 4 stars. So I think you're going to get some dudes in here who have no business being on the field for Michigan, and I think Texas is going to roll. And yeah, it's going to be a great start to the Coach Boom era.
And not necessarily, he doesn't get credit for that, though.
I know, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a great start. It would be a great start to the Biff Poggi era. All right, let's talk Mayo Bowl. Wake Forest, Mississippi State. Mississippi State's a 4.5-point favorite for this one. The over-under I have is 5. Please don't dip that in mayo food items that are, in fact, dipped in mayo. Oh, look, I'm going to come clean here. I've been going through a bit of a mayo phase with my lunch sandwich, my deli meats.
A mayo phase? Is that like an emo phase?
No, it's less depressing. It's just a little bit more of it's more I'm playing complimentary football with my sandwich that I have every day. Sometimes, you get a little bit sick of the ranch, you get a little bit sick of the honey mustard. And sometimes if I've got like a Cajun turkey or something like that, I just want something that's going to complement it a little bit better and not overpower it. And so I've been going through a little bit of a mayo phase, and I am not one of these people that thinks mayo is the most disgusting thing on earth. Okay. I am not a mayo lover, but if I see Oreos or pretzels or slices of pizza being dipped in mayo, I'm opting out. I
You're
can't
hitting
do
the
it.
portal.
I'm hitting the portal. I am. Can't do it. No. Are you? You're not a big mayo guy, are you?
No, so I'm like for sure a former fat kid. Like when I was growing up, I was that dude who would like put everything in my sandwich, and whatever. So I used to be like kind of pro, remember they used to have like wacky mayos too, like they had like the colored ones and stuff like that.
They still do. They yeah, like they got they got, like spicy mayo. Spicy mayo on a poke bowl is money in the bank, but I do think that they had like the aioli mayo or something like that. It's look, it is difficult to I think be a mayo person all the time.
Yeah,
And this game forces you, if you are a lover of mayo, you love this game. I just want to see the coach get drenched in mayo. That's all I really need to see.
yeah, I mean, like I said, there are bowl games that do it right. There are bowl games that do it wrong. Some bowl games are probably money laundering schemes, right? Like sports washing. But Mayo it's pure, right? It's like the Idaho potato bowl. It's like, hey, we're here to sell a product. Here's the product. Have fun with it. I love it when a bowl game has a real, tangible. It's kind of like NIL. We talked about it when Bo Nix was doing Milo's sweet tea ads. It was awesome. When guys started endorsing like weird offshore crypto funds, it's like we might need to regulate this a little bit, right? And so same thing with bowl games. It's like give me as gross as it can be. The visual of a Mayo Bowl is so much better than like the I don't know the Palantir Bowl or whatever.
Yeah, I get it. It is product placement. There is, I just don't think you're converting non mayo lovers with this approach. And I respect the approach because at least you're mixing it up. You're having fun. You can't not have fun with it. Don't overdo it. Why can't we just focus on the things that Mayo's actually good on? Wouldn't that make a lot of sense? Maybe that'd be too cheesy. I don't know. Whatever. I'll let the bowl decision makers figure that out. Mississippi State, we thought when they were playing that Egg Bowl, it was bowl or bust. Turns out it wasn't because when nobody wants to play in a bowl game at 5-7, and you've got a little bit of APR working in your favor, you apparently can still play in a bowl game. And it's a really weird dynamic to kind of actually see how this is played out, where you lose that game to Ole Miss, you go 2 weeks thinking your season is over. And I'm sure like guys were checked out or guys had already gone home. And then your coach calls you up and he goes, I want you to put the word out there that we back up. And suddenly you're back up. And some guys had probably already started the break, but it's good for Mississippi State. It's good. Even if guys show up out of shape and, guys had turned the page, you get 3 extra weeks of practice. It makes a ton of sense why Jeff Lebby would want to do this. No longer are you the coach trying to end a multi-year bowl list streak as well. You get that in your back pocket. And if you win this game, you're 6-7, and people kind of forget that you really shouldn't have been in there in the first place. So from that standpoint, it makes sense. You got Kamario Taylor getting reps. I think all of this is potentially a win for Mississippi State. I think maybe Zach Arnett's coaching in the bowl game, which is weird.
Man, we have had coaching changes this offseason that will never be seen again, dog. We have seen precedents set that are just like, okay, so you're bringing in your former head coach, who was your defensive coordinator when your previous head coach tragically passed away, and he's going to take over because your coach is a little bit on the hot seat, but it was his idea. But he's also going to coach the bowl game. I mean, I love Zach Arnett. I think it's a great hire. Like, I would get him in the building as soon as I could.
I don't know how that's going to work for what he's going to try and do, schematically speaking. I don't know that all of a sudden he's going to implement a new scheme in there or how that's going to work, but it's weird because they made this move before they knew they were playing a bowl game. So that's like he took this job and I'm sure thinking, all right, I'll have plenty of time to be able to implement my system, come back and I'm full go for spring ball and all that stuff. And obviously he would have gotten to Starkville upon receiving this job, but there's still a different dynamic at play here with what Mississippi State's defense is going to be able to do. And I don't know what they're going to bust out, how many 3-3-5 formations they're going to come out in this bowl game, TBD on that. But to me, this game comes down to a simple question, Will. Who could you see as the more likely coach to be drenched in mayo? Jeff Lebby or friend of the show, Jake Dickard? Which coach?
I mean, that's really what life comes down to, right? Who's getting drenched with mayo? Who's going home? Bittersweet because you're not covered in mayo. I think it's like losing the game is a little bit of a blessing. I think you hit on it, right? The important thing for Mississippi State, like there are things that matter. Mississippi State getting the extra bowl practices, getting everybody kind of back in for the offseason, not feeling defeated. Like losing a bowl game and getting all the free gift cards and swag and stuff, I feel like is just a way better feeling than just missing a bowl game, especially in the SEC. Because it's kind of awkward. It's like, all right, guys, like have fun, like go watch your friends that you played with, go play in bowl games. So I think just being included in that is really helpful for state. And I mean, yeah, man. I don't have a ton to like as far as like what we saw from State. I think that they were super up and down this year, and the defensive thing is hard to kind of get your head around. To your point, it's kind of a unique defense. I'm not going to pretend that I could get in and say, okay, this is this guy's coaching tree, this is this guy's coaching tree, especially in a bowl game environment. But a situation that I think for Mississippi State is a win regardless. I think they'll just get camaraderie. They'll get to kind of get around the guys, like see who's there next year, see who's locked in. So I think in that aspect, it's a blessing and it matters more than a result for sure.
Well, you didn't answer the question. Who could you actually see drenched in mayo?
Oh man, I mean, if I'm rooting for somebody, it's definitely Levy, right? Like he seems like a Mayo lad. Seeing him jolly at the end of the year after what the lads have done this year, very up and down season for him, but we love him, right? I think it would be such a great. I could make so many memes out of him. That's what I'm rooting for.
I don't know that I love Levy yet. I don't. I don't. I'm a little bit more uncertain on some Levy things, but we can get into that in the offseason. Levy's figure is what would lead many to say that he fits the build of a Mayo guy. I think that's ignoring the illustrious history of the Mayo Bowl because Dickert is kind of more of the build that the Mayo has followed in this game. You look at Shane Beamer, you look at PJ Fleck. We're talking about more of the slot receiver build, if you will.
Wow, that's a good point. It's like a prophecy. It's like a negative prophecy where the Mayo is chasing guys who avoid Mayo their whole lives. This is good.
What are you? What type of energy are you giving off? Do you really want that Mayo? To be fair, I don't think Mike Locksley wanted that Mayo, and he still got that Mayo. Now he got that Mayo with a huge hat, gigantic hat that Mike Locksley wore. That should have been illegal. I understand it was 2022. Everybody was doing the big hats for whatever reason. It had a moment. He shouldn't have been able to shield the Mayo with that. Nonetheless,
Yeah,
that's why.
he's the one who's hated the Mayo the most, right? And I could argue Beamer is the one who's liked it the most.
And Beamer got a concussion. I don't care what he says. He was concussed from that collision wherein they had to learn the hard way how to properly dump Mayo, and shaking it and having it just land on a coach's head. That wasn't it. They've gotten better. Well, I'm picking Wake Forest to win this game. 38-28. Mississippi State's defense desperately needs the help of Zach Arnett. And I think Jake Dickert just covets the Mayo. Simple as that.
He yearns for the Mayo. The children yearn for the Mayo. Yeah, I think that's I mean, they've been a way better team this year, right? And that's what you got to root for. I think just because of the chaos element with Mississippi State, they could truly do like a back against the wall. Hey, nobody wanted Mississippi State here, so I'll go ahead and take Levy. I think it'd be funny.
There we go. All right, I've got one more question here because it's an important one. Do you know who the quarterback in this game is for Wake Forest?
No, I'll be honest.
Two hints. One hint is that he started his career with Joe Moorhead. He's a disciple. That's not going to be the thing that gets it for you. The other hint is that he went to your high school. He went to Hoover High.
It's not Robbie Ashford, is it?
It is Robbie freaking Ashford.
Oh, let's go, dog.
Yeah.
Well, that's a line setter right there, dude. I wish I had known that information. Robbie Ashford, he is kind of like all-time backup quarterback. So yep. I don't know, man. What if we get like an all-time Robbie Ashford game? I'm also rooting for that. I'm rooting for an all-time Robbie Ashford game and a Jeff Levy win.
I think Robbie Ashford is finally out of eligibility after this year, but don't take that to the bank. So yeah, one more final game for Robbie Ashford in this role. All right, let's kick it to our guy, Peter Burns. Tons of storylines to dig into with PB, including some Lane LSU thoughts. We've got the A&M fallout. We've got the DeBoer sliding door. Didn't mean to rhyme there. It just kind of happened. But PB was great. So here is Peter Burns. I'm now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is the one and only Peter Burns. PB, will you listen to this interview at 1.5 speed?
I normally do with you and Will, which I listen to every Sunday and every Thursday, or right before our shows, and I steal like 90% of your content. I'm going to say I'm normally a good solid 1.3. Like 1.5, if you guys get really excited, is a little too quick for me. But 1.3 is like the sweet spot as far as podcast speed.
You can do 1.3?
Yeah. Yeah, at least I think with the new Apple update right now, I think that's the last time I saw one was like a 1.3. So
Dang.
I don't know. I was listening to you guys on the way to studio at like 5 a.m. this morning, and I'm pretty sure I saw 1.3 because sometimes I will listen on Spotify on other things. And Spotify, you can go back and forth. Let's see what you guys are at right now. Let's see. It's 1.3.
Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
Wow. Look, I've been trying to slow down my dialect. It's something that I used to have a much quicker tempo, kind of like the Lane Kiffin offense, which we'll get to in a little bit here. But I used to speak a lot quicker, and I realized at a certain point, if I just slow down my thoughts, I probably sound a lot more digestible. But if you're listening at 1.3 speed anyways, then what's the point of that?
I'm so ADD, and I'm so afraid of whatever little squirrel thought comes into my mind. I have to say it fast, which means I just completely butcher the English language like 95% of the time. And for me, I literally, when I first started on television, every time, you get excited to talk about things, you start going quicker, right? I mean, that's just normal speech patterns. And I would always write on my script, slow down. And like 5 seconds before a show would start, I'd just be like, slow down. And then I'd be like, and welcome to the SEC. Now we're going to talk about that. Like, I can't, I literally, and for 14 years now, I've just been like, screw it. I'm just going to talk fast. I'll screw up the English language and hope most of it's there. Closed captioning must hate my ass. Like, absolutely, for television.
No, there's much more egregious than you out there.
I mean, Jimbo Fisher is set the bar pretty damn high, but I mean, it's not that far removed.
Look, you're a pro's pro in my book. Let's start with where you and Jimbo both were this past weekend in College Station. That Miami Texas A&M game. Did you come away from that game thinking that significant offensive changes beyond just Colin Klein obviously moving on to Kansas State? That's a significant offensive change in itself for A&M. But that significant offensive changes could be in store, or was this just simply an A&M offense that might have peaked too soon?
I mean, I think it was an A&M offense that ran into a really good Miami defense, right? And I think that was more of what I kind of took away from it. I mean, even pregame, you go back to the Jimbo Fisher thing, like I see him there and I'm like, I wonder when the last time Jimbo was here. And it legitimately was the last time he was coaching. So that was kind of an interesting interaction. And then he goes to the ACC set and I'm like, man, like I wonder what he thinks of this. He was that offensive guru, right? And I started thinking about what he would think of, allegedly, and that's why he got $75 million to leave, or $1 million to leave. But I don't think this was necessarily a, Colin Klein looking at K-State already, or Marcel Reed is that limited in what he can do, because we've seen what happens when he plays well, like the second half of South Carolina, as good as anybody. LSU games back and forth. I mean, 2 years in a row, it's there. It just wasn't in that game. And that's a product of Mario Cristobal and this defense being legit. And frankly, I don't know if the moment was too big for Marcel. I just didn't like the fact, Connor, that they didn't go tempo early.
I agree.
Like, I thought rolling him outside of the pocket when they realized that Miami's defensive front was that good, do that a little bit more, have some more designed runs for him, and go tempo. It really wasn't, until later in the game that they decided, hey, we're going to run some pace. And that's when, honestly, he looked the most comfortable of the whole game.
He's still A&M's best quarterback since Johnny Manziel.
Yeah.
And, people that want to say like, oh, Kyler Murray Kyler Murray didn't do it at A&M, so that doesn't really count. But Johnny not being there on Saturday, how close were you to getting the call, hey, PB, college game day guest picker, now's your time to shine?
I was sitting, I flew in and stayed with Billy Lucci, the unofficial mayor of College Station from Texags. And we wake up that morning and he's like, yeah, I don't know if Johnny's going to make college game day and stuff. And then, I have no idea what actually happened. I mean, I know there was Instagram stuff that he was at the Jake Paul fight, or Logan Paul, whichever of the Paul brothers fought Arnold in Miami, and then he didn't show up. And so I think it legitimately went to the point of like, hey, who else can you get quickly? And Billy knows everybody. They, text Alex Caruso, who just happened to be flying in at the same exact time. And then poof, Alex Caruso. And he's there and, world champion. So it worked out great. And he's such a good dude. And he's probably more locked in maybe than Johnny would be as like actual football right now to a certain extent. So it would have been Lucci would have been above me because they like him in College Station. He knows about that. I probably still would have been like 43rd on the list as a designated survivor for the game day picker.
Wait, was Billy coordinating this behind the scenes of like, hey, like College Game Day, like reaching out to Billy and being like, hey, your Rolodex at A&M is as deep as it gets. Like, who should we get to replace Johnny?
I think there was a lot of I think there was a lot of communication between a lot of parties of when they had to pivot last second. And listen, man, it's disappointing because Manziel, it's the largest game that A&M has had, at least with that on the line. And then going back to last year, the night game against Texas, when felt even bigger at that aspect of it. So obviously disappointed that he wasn't there, but I think the biggest takeaway I had was right from the start of the game. We were there. We saw the College Game Day kicker in overalls and trying to kick it. Me and Ian Fitzsimmons from ESPN Radio on the sidelines, like right by it. We're like, there's no way this dude has a chance. Like none. He's in overalls. Like it's not happening. But mostly because there was like a 25-mile-an-hour wind into his face, gusting. And then boom, he actually hit 2 really good shots for $1 million, and he missed it. I didn't know at the end of the day, Connor, that would be the best field goal kicking that we saw in the entire game. I mean, serious. Like that guy ended up being, better than what we saw for A&M in Miami at that point. And I think that's why I was interested on how they would run the offense for Marcel Reed. And I think early what they did was they thought, all right, we need to run the ball. They couldn't run it. And then they just kept trying to throw these little pop passes, which are fine. But even Marcel was late on those and never got a chance for his playmakers to hit him in stride. And I think ultimately you can't do that against a team that pursues so well like Michigan, or not Michigan, like Miami.
You were kind of part of it. You got to see up close a game that everybody seemed frustrated with from an entertainment standpoint. The fact that there's only one offensive touchdown scored. It's not until 2 minutes left in this game or whatever. And the theme of opening weekend of the college football playoff is always, no matter what the format is, how can we get more entertainment? And there's just no easy solution to that. But you threw out an idea for the 16-team playoff, if we do get that, of what it should look like, of 5 highest ranked conference champs, 11 at large, top 8 seeds get home playoff games. That's the best that I've seen so far. If we are going to expand this field once again, that's the best that I've seen so far. So explain, how you came up with this crazy radical idea that just makes, all sorts of sense.
I kept it simple, stupid, right? Like, that's the idea. Keep it simple, stupid. I mean, that's kind of what it was. And real quick, I want to go back to what you said about on television. It didn't look real good. And I understand it. In the stadium, it was amazing. Like it felt like a diet version of 9-6 2011 LSU Alabama, which I thought was, I was in the building for that game as well too, where you felt every single play with A&M and Miami felt like it could control the game because both defenses were playing pretty well. And so I digress from there. But the idea of the college football playoff going to 16 teams is you go look at, I mean, it's criminal that if you get a bye, you don't get a chance to play in front of your stadium. I mean, like that's absolutely ridiculous. And so I'm sitting there going, the top 8 of seeds, they get a home game. That was fantastic. You get a couple more teams in, and you still carve the path for a group of 5, group of 6 team to get in, which probably saves you from them having any kind of litigation and say it's antitrust or monopoly or whatever it is. And then you pick 11 teams. And in the past, I would go, well, if we were having this conversation in your pod in 2018, I'd be like, dude, why are we? There's not 15 teams or 16 teams that can compete and win a couple of games. That's 2017, 2018 thinking. Now in 2025 with a parity level, yeah, like Texas could have won games. I mean, do you think Notre Dame could have won a couple of games or go on a run? I think so. I mean, I don't think that we have the dominant, holy hell, look at Georgia in 2021 and 2022 type game. The teams are like Bama or back in the day. You just don't have that utter complete domination where your third string guy is a future NFL guy. All right. And so to me, I think the field can get a little bit bigger and those teams will be more competitive.
Here's what I think, though. I agree with you. I think that the parity has changed those conversations. I used to look at the 247 talent composite rankings, as this kind of end all be all because the results reflected that in the
Yeah.
playoff. And now I'm looking at it going, well, that means absolutely nothing. You know, Indiana's like outside the top 50 with these things. Texas Tech, who really cares with the way that they recruit in the portal? And you can find ways around that. My question, though, would for this specific field, for everybody that was so frustrated and was like, hey, this is why we got to get to 16. Notre Dame, Texas, Vandy. Those were the three teams I felt like, hey, if we had just gotten in, they lost to the two toughest teams on their schedule. Would you have picked any of those teams to win multiple playoff games and get to a semifinal? Because I don't even think I would have done that.
I mean, again, I go back to, well, who was so incredibly dominant that you didn't think they could win that game, right? I mean, like I think Notre Dame was as good as anybody. I think Notre Dame was playing better than Alabama, especially late into the season.
That's fair.
I damn sure think we saw that with Texas and Texas A&M. Like Texas found something with Arch. The numbers were much better, and I think they would have been viable at that point. Vanderbilt would have been such an interesting mismatch against teams that I don't think anybody would have been ready for that as well. So yeah, I do believe that. And if I didn't, then I go, well, we don't need to expand it, right? Like fix the ACC tiebreaker, and we don't have a JMU. And nobody's really complaining about Tulane just because, hey, somebody had to be there from the group of five. And I think we complained because it was a rematch of a butt whooping that we saw. And then two, it was JMU getting in there, which, I mean, the first 5 possessions, Oregon scored. So you're like, well, all right, they don't deserve a spot. The only issue I had with everybody taking their pick like beforehand and just crapping all over the group of 5, group of 6 teams is like, oh, they clearly don't. They're AAA and stuff like that. I go, that's fine, but let me see what it looks like this year. Like, let's see what JMU and let's look like Tulane. Like, don't have that take early. And now that we see it, I can admit, yeah, you're right. There is a talent discrepancy. And I think what I looked at now is these group of 5 teams are not AAA. They're AA, because AA baseball in minor leagues, you have one good season, you get called up. Okay. And before in 2017, 2018, you might have a Boise that can kind of just develop talent. The transfer portal's not open and they just have a pipeline of good players. That pipeline might have been 20 good players back in the day. Now it's probably down to 6 that don't get picked off. And that's why all these group of 5 coaches are like, get me the hell out of there. That's why group of 5 athletic directors right now are taking jobs with Learfield and other places because they're like, I can't compete on this level any longer.
It's a good point. And the separation is clearly there. And even if you feel like these kids deserve that opportunity and you don't want to totally disregard the group of 5, you're right. I mean, we have changed a lot over the course of the last 4 or 5 years with the way those rosters are picked apart. Let's talk a little Lane here. My hot take is that it's more pressing for Lane to turn around LSU's ground game than it is for him to just nail this first quarterback transfer addition, assuming that's going to be the case, just because of how much LSU has struggled with the ground game. And it feels like it's really hurt their floor in recent years to struggle with that in the 2020s. So is that a fair assessment of like, they need to figure that out? Otherwise, LSU isn't just flipping the switch overnight.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of chicken or the egg to a certain extent. If you have a really good quarterback, well, I mean, I go back to Joe Burrow in that amazing year in 2019. It made Clyde Edwards-Helaire at the end of the year look great because everybody feared the pass, so you could just run the ball all day long, and there was a balance to it. And I think the common misconception with fans is that same thing kind of with Josh Heupel. They think, oh, it's this pass-heavy offense. It's not. It's really more of a run-heavy offense that is so good that it opens up the passing lanes. So, and that's what happened right now is LSU did not have a mobile quarterback in Garrett Nussmeier. His arm wasn't right all year long, and they couldn't run the ball. It was a triple whammy, and that's why LSU, has Lane Kiffin right now, and it didn't work for Brian Kelly. So, yeah, and I think the hiring of Kevin Smith at Ole Miss, the running back coach, I'm sure there's no tampering going involved right now of who's going to go headed to the boot with him at this point, which is fascinating. But yeah, you get the right rushing attack and you get the right strategy behind it, the quarterback's going to want to follow because you're going to be like, hey, we're going to be so good running the ball. People are going to have to throw 7-8 in the box. World's your oyster. And you get a mobile quarterback like we saw Trinidad Chambliss and they hit gold with. Why can't you compete next year? I mean, Mendoza was a perfect find and they are, win the damn Heisman. You go back and look at Trinidad, a perfect find. Even John Mateer, who I know he didn't play well, but that was a good find. So, Yeah, I'm very curious about how Lane has put together that roster, because you get the recruiting composite rankings, but also now you get Lane, who's good at working the transfer portal, so it's perfect for LSU. But I look at the other side too, Gunner. What the heck is going to happen with Ole Miss against Georgia? And the reason why I say that is Georgia knew they were playing Ole Miss. Since when the rankings came out, they knew that Ole Miss was going to be Tulane. So you're going to have Kirby Smart with like 2.5 weeks to game plan for that. Meanwhile, Ole Miss coaching staff is in Baton Rouge right now, the majority of them working for Lane Kiffin, and not 8 hours a day on a game plan against a team they already lost once to so far.
And Gunnar Stockton was so good in the second half of
Oh,
that game. Like, it should be the type of thing that Pete Golding has had sleepless nights thinking about it. Like, I even was looking back at the numbers today. He didn't have incompletion in the second half of that game. I mean, was just lights out. And as great as Chambliss was on the road, and that's still something that Kirby has to address, like that Ole Miss defense got picked apart in the second half of that game, and it's the reason that
physical.
they didn't go undefeated.
Yeah. I mean, they were up 10 late into that game, and then Kirby's like, all right, we don't need to do anything crazy special. We are just more of a physical team than you are. And I also think, last year, those teams coming off of a bye looked really rusty. And I know the matchups weren't great, Connor, but I think the fact that, Bama had that bye after the SEC championship game gets them a little bit rested. And I think Ole Miss got a little bit banged up against Tulane. Trinidad had to come out of the game. Kewan had a little bit of, it looked like maybe a shoulder injury. A couple of the wide receivers got banged up. So, I mean, it came at a cost that, yeah, you got a college football game underneath your belt, but I think there's a clear-cut advantage for Georgia in that matchup coming up in the Sugar Bowl.
I know we have a college football playoff to talk about. I know that Ole Miss is focused on this current team, but man, September 19th, 2026, LSU at Ole Miss. I was trying, like me, you'll be able to answer this question. I think it's got a chance to be the SEC's most anticipated regular season game since Alabama, the rematch in 2013. Like, is there any other that comes to mind for you that you would put ahead of that one?
Well, I mean, there's small ones like, Bobby Petrino's first game back at, when, that was interesting at A&M Arkansas. Other ones about like, Hugh Freeze and his first time back, Lane going back to Tennessee and stuff like that.
This will be more.
I mean, not one that I thought you might have to call the National Guard. And I'm being dead ass serious about that, because there is not just vitriol, there is hatred upon a rivalry that's already been pretty good. And the fact that it's not in Tiger Stadium, the fact that it is in Oxford, and the fact of how he tried to burn it all down, and the coach's standpoint. Now, add another element of Frank Wilson going to Ole Miss. I mean, this is like college football coach wife swap, where, everybody's just cross streams and they hate each other. I mean, normally I take 1 weekend off a year to go to an LSU home game. Okay.
I was going to say, you already got this state book, don't you?
I think I got to go to Oxford for that game. I think I do, because, as I get older, I've been blessed to see so many games, but how many experiences are you going to be able to say, I was in the building for that one? Like, I would have loved to have been there for Texas and A&M in the night game at Kyle Field. There was so much on the line in that game. But then now to see Lane and how he handles it is going to be absolutely fascinating to watch.
I won't let our friend Chris Doran call you part-time PB for being at that one.
Thank you.
I refuse to let him do that. That's just mean.
I can't. I don't even know. What do you think the ticket price is for that? I mean, it's 65,000, and I guarantee you, there's 400,000 people that want to go to that game.
The scarcity, yeah.
I mean, just the credential. The press box is not going to have enough people in it. I mean, I guarantee you, when we look back at it, and you can mark the tape here as we do this in December of 25. I want to say it's going to be $1,400 get-in price
easily
to get into that, into Vaught Hemingway when LSU goes to Oxford next year. Maybe 1,500.
Gosh, what a crazy thought! Can't wait for it. Well, no, we still got basically a full playoff left, but absolutely can't wait for it. I know that so much of this is going to be determined by the portal stuff, but Lane had a team that was ranked last in Bill Connolly's percentage of returning production, last among SEC teams, and they went 11-1. What is a fair year one expectation for Lane in Baton Rouge?
I mean, now that you would go to 9 conference games and only 1 bye week, I think the floor is still 9-3. I mean, you can't go all in on that contract, despite what the Louisiana governor said that we're going to rework the contracts and investigate the agents. Well, guess what? You got absolutely taken to the house on the Lane Kiffin deal. You can't do that and pay Blake Baker $3 million to stay and all these coaches and push all your chips in and be any worse than 9-3. You can't. Not when teams can flip a switch now in the transfer portal. You can't. And so I looked at this and I've asked that question of, let's say Lane's there for 5 years, okay, at LSU, which I don't know if I'd take the over of 4.5. I just would hammer the over that it ends ugly like it has everywhere else. In a 5-year run, you have to go to the college football playoff 3 times, and I think you have to win 1 title out of 5 years.
Yep.
For it to be, all right, the juice was actually worth the squeeze here. And LSU's, I think that's the expectation for LSU right now.
I think those are both really fair. It is a title or bust situation. Can't leave a playoff team and not win a title. Just can't. Yeah. Absolutely can't. Let's close with perhaps an even better question. What's a fair expectation for Arch in 2026?
I mean, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but it should be to be in one of the finalists for the Heisman. And I think now that's a fair expectation as opposed to it being unfair when he was coming in as a first-year starter this year. I mean, I've never seen, and it kind of just shows you about how microwavable society is, that Arch goes from, quote-unquote, the greatest quarterback in the history of the game to the biggest flop in the history of the game to, at the end of the season, going, I think they could have won, maybe gone on a run because he was that good. And I think that was not necessarily on him. That was more on Sark learning how to really maximize the talent level that he had over at Texas. So I was fascinated with the move of Will Muschamp being hired as a defensive coordinator. That new, I mean, like, shocking, absolutely shocking to me. And I'm not used to being shocked. Like when Bobby Petrino got announced as the offensive coordinator for Bill Belichick, I was like, that doesn't shock me anymore. Nothing. But when all of a sudden you hear boom, and I thought Texas over the last couple of years, as good as their offense was, it was their defense that kind of kept them in these games. And Pete's gone, and now Will Muschamp comes out of nowhere. Like that was one of those wow moments.
It was the fact too that it wasn't just, oh, he's fired and then we have a week-long search and then it ends in Will Muschamp. It was no. He's being replaced and this is happening now.
And it was like, oh, because Sark wants to spend more time with the offense. And I'm like, and I'm like, I mean, I understand it to a certain extent. It's, I guess they look at Will being, hey, you're there is going to be running this defense, but also you have a lot of head coaching experience. So you can help delegate some of that stuff that you've been helping Kirby back in the day on and whatnot when you were kind of on that staff. But that's going to be fascinating to watch. I look at still the fascinating story is going to be Mike Elko and A&M. I want to go back to that real quick because I love Elko. I think he's the Teddy Roosevelt of college football. Just he brought a different mentality that Sumlin and that Fisher didn't have.
I'm stealing that, by the way. That's mine now.
Oh, speak softly and carry a big stick. Like that's who he is. And I remember right before the South Carolina game, seeing the reports that he got a contract extension. And I'm like, have we learned nothing? Like nothing in college football and athletics? Because the Penn State job was open at the time. And I don't mean this in a bad way because Elko, I think he's the right coach for A&M. I go, Elko was making $3.5 million at A&M or at Duke. He gets bumped to $7.5 million with the idea that you hopefully will become a college football playoff team at some point, something that Jimbo couldn't do. And you did it. But you gave him a contract extension before he even accomplished any of that stuff that you had already hired him and gave him a huge pay raise for. And now you're going to sit there and go, I gave him an extension and you lose to Texas again, and then you lose a home playoff game at home. Like, I mean, you start the season 2-2 next year. We're talking about a team in Texas A&M that you're like, all right, you've gone 2-4 in your last 6 games. You're on the hot seat and you already gave him an extension. And by the way, not only did Elko get an extension, but because they locked him into it, Trev Alberts, the athletic director, got an extension himself. Like, the shell game here that Jimmy Sexton plays with all these guys is truly unbelievable. I mean, this is Rembrandt. It's Leonardo. It is one of the masters at work.
And at the time, it didn't feel as significant because of what was still potentially ahead. And you've already won the Jimbo Fisher breakup from a PR standpoint. Hey, you moved on, and by year 2, you're hosting a college football playoff game. These are wins. But it is still the SEC. And it is still the SEC in that.
But where was he going to go? And again, at what point are you going to have an athletic director? And this is not a Trev Alberts deal. It kind of is, but it's everywhere. At what point, and A&M was a perfect example of that, going, you have the facilities, you have a fertile recruiting base, you've got a hungry fan base that's willing to do anything because they haven't experienced the pinnacle of a national championship or success. So, like, the canvas is blank. And you're thinking someone's going to leave that and all the NIL opportunities and the oil money they have to go to Penn State? Like, no. Like, someone has to call these guys on the bluff, and they didn't. And now you could find yourself in the same situation in 6 months from now going, all right, what do we do now? Is this the right move? I hope it is, but incredible.
There's a reason why the SEC is now 12 years removed from its last coach leaving the conference willingly for another power conference job. Ironically enough, it being Penn State, a stat that I say over and over again on this podcast with Franklin. But the reason is Jimmy Sexton. It is entirely Jimmy Sexton and nobody else.
Jimmy almost had one of those Elijah Moore dog piece celebration egg bowl moments, because if John Mateer connects with that pass in that game against Alabama, in the second quarter, Oklahoma's winning that game. Alabama's not coming back. And Alabama would have lost that game with the Michigan job being open. That would have been fascinating to see. Like, that's one of those plays that the butterfly effect is going to be so interesting had it not happened, right? Like, that's like Dante Culpepper and Drew Brees. Drew Brees, failing his physical. So Nick Saban had to go with Dante Culpepper at Miami instead of Drew Brees. And that changed college football and NFL football forever. That probably 20 minutes in Norman, Oklahoma, when Alabama decides to go for it on 4th and 2 and not kick a field goal, and they get it, and then the block punt or the fumbled punt, and then the pick six. Like, the narratives that changed college football maybe for a decade on that play is amazing.
I still think he would have stayed. Maybe I'm in the minority.
I don't think
he
would have. Like, I say this, I don't think he would have run away, because that's not Kalen DeBoer. That's not in his DNA. But I also understand that if you have a blank slate now, where sky is the limit at Michigan, because it'll never be more of a dumpster fire than it is right now after the Sharon Moore deal, after the cheating allegations with Harbaugh, after they had a staffer fired, after the Ward manual was a disaster and all of this stuff. Like, you can only go up. And what's an easier path to the college football playoff? Is it 9 games in the SEC where Caleb Downs, an Ohio State guy that played at both places, SEC and Big Ten's, like, yeah, every week it's tough in the SEC. We only have to play about 3 or 4 games in the Big Ten. Like, that's not me saying it. That's Caleb Downs, an Ohio State Buckeye, playing it. Like, I don't think he would run away from it, but my goodness, it would be, if I was Jimmy Sexton, I'd tell him what to do. Restart the clock and get a bunch of money. Counterpoint.
He was at Washington. He could have stayed. And had that path.
Yeah. I mean, but then also Michigan and Washington, I think that's a difference maker as well too. And
Jimmy Sexton's entering our minds. That's what's happening here.
And then I think, again, 20-5 versus ranked opponents, 10-4 as an underdog. What is it? 4-0
against
on the
AP
road against top 10 teams. Like, what the hell else do you want for Kalen DeBoer? And so I never want to hear an Alabama fan say anything, like, because who in the world, Connor, we'll leave at this. Let's say, play the butterfly effect, and had he left, who in the world would you have hired if you were Alabama? Like,
fair question.
There's not a soul that I think, because when Kalen was hired, I was like, okay, yeah, I'd never thought about that, but yeah, that actually, when I take a step back, that makes sense. There's not a single person that I think would have made sense in that spot and could have been an absolute free-for-all.
Kenny Dillingham is the only one that comes to mind of like guy that is speaking outwardly about needing to get more of those resources at Arizona State. Clearly, he's trying to play some of those cards. He would like to ideally stay there, but he also knows that in this day and age in college football to have sustained success, you need a full backing. And entering that situation, replacing Kalen DeBoer, and knowing that you're not replacing the GOAT, you're replacing him. I think that could have spoken to someone like Kenny Dillingham. I don't think we will find out.
But also, I think one of the things that has hurt Alabama in this is the old school version of Alabama, the big money, the boosters. I think they live in the world where it's almost like below them to have to do what Texas Tech did, to have to do what Indiana is doing, to have to do what Arizona and Kenny Dillingham is doing. But that's the reality of college football now, right? That's why nobody wants to sign the CSC agreement, because they're like, the market is whatever I want to pay for my players. I don't want a fair market right now. And I think Alabama, old school version of it, used to love maybe when there would be bagmen or Chevy, whatever that is, Camaros,
the Challenger,
Dodge Challenger, they were
Challenger, one of those,
whatever they are. They were okay in that shadowy world, but now we're Alabama. We don't have to do that. You damn straight you have to do it, and now we're seeing it.
BB, great stuff. Get some sleep, man. We'll talk again soon.
I am tired. I'll try to speak a little slower next time. Thanks, bud.
You're good. Thanks, man. All right, well, let's send people on their way with some lad of the week. Who you got?
So mine's pretty easy. And I think with all the weird stuff that's kind of happened in the last couple weeks, it's easy to lose sight of this stuff. But I think it's Frank Wilson. I think for the amount of stuff that Frank Wilson has given to the state of Louisiana and for the LSU program, I know things have been a little bit weird with some of the National Signing Day stuff and how people are saying, is he kind of recruiting against the program or what's going on? But I think that stuff loses sight of the fact that this guy is Louisiana through and through. And I think that it shows kind of classiness of a fan base that you can move past that stuff and root for a guy to be successful. As a rival, you root for Ole Miss to go 0-12 every year, right? But I hope that none of those negative comments have been directed at Frank Wilson, at his family, stuff like that. Because I think that the job he's done kind of getting LSU on track to a degree, right? Got an SEC win, so I think that he didn't ask to be put in this position this year. And obviously you could talk about his failings as a coach. I understand that. But as a dude, everybody has said that he, is gravitational. He has a great personality. He's made a difference in a lot of young men's lives. So I think that kind of one last victory lap for LSU. And like I said, I don't think that they're going to be very locked in. I'm not saying that it's going to be like, some great like Disney movie for Frank in the bowl game. But I think that just remember kind of like what you say about people. And that goes across everybody, right? Like emotions are super high during like, when coaches are leaving and guys are hitting the portal and stuff like that. It's a Christmas season. So just be aware that guys have families and, be thankful for the time that you had with a player or with a coach instead of saying, oh, this guy is like a fraud and look at all the negative stuff he's done, and separate the body of work from the individual. It's fine to critique what someone has done, at their job. That's kind of our jobs, right? But to then kind of go past that. I haven't seen a ton of that for Frank Wilson, but I just want to give him his flowers on the way out because it's going to be easy in 10 years to look back and say, look how great Frank was. But right now it's a little bit harder. So just know that, even if guys are switching teams or if coordinators are leaving your school or whatever it would be, those guys were hired for a reason. They brought you success, or maybe they didn't and they still have a family at home. So just be aware of that when you're on social this weekend and talking about people, they're regular people.
Don't tweet at recruits. Don't tweet at interim coaches who might be going to the other side in a coaching breakup. That's what I would say.
Can you tweet at portal players?
Oh, yeah. How are they going to know that you want them if you don't tweet at them? Portal players are different. They've already been in college. It's not tweeting at a high school kid. That's just
they're grown
weird.
Men. That's a good point. Yeah, if you are in the portal, that's free real estate. So there you go, friends at home. I won't be tweeting at any portal players. But if you see anybody who's in the portal, that's an academic. That's a businessman right there. He's on LinkedIn, so you could go holler at him for a job interview.
Fernando Mendoza put the Heisman Trophy victory on his LinkedIn profile. You can tweet at someone like that. If they have their stuff together with a LinkedIn profile, surely they're responding to job interests all the time. What's one more fan making a pitch to come to a school? They're getting recruited already. So no problems there whatsoever. But interim coaches, that's where we draw the line. Of course, Frank Wilson being one of them. Another interim coach, former interim coach who was part of that very famous, historic interim bowl, the first ever in the history of the Southeastern Conference. Robert Patrick Petrino, Will. I teased it. He is the new offensive coordinator at UNC for Bill Belichick. I just run out of words to describe the career steps of Bobby Petrino because, and I was talking to my guy Michael Katz about this. It feels like Bobby Petrino has accepted jobs for content. Whether he knows he's doing that for content, I don't know, but he is certainly doing it for those of us in the content business. And I'm going to be grateful for that because when he took that job at Texas A&M to become Jimbo Fisher's offensive coordinator and he comes back into power conference football, I'm thinking to myself, this is going to be just a gold mine of content. And it turns out, Bobby P was a little bit quiet during the season. He didn't really go against Jimbo until after the fact. We had some bad camera angles that were in the booth, and you couldn't, for whatever reason, get a clear shot of Bobby Petrino calling plays and dropping F-bombs and yelling at Jimbo through the headset. We couldn't get that. And so Bobby says, you know what? No worries. What if I made it up to everybody by going to Arkansas? It just taking this job as Sam Pittman's offensive coordinator, and he's on the hot seat too. So maybe there's a chance that I could become the interim OC. Wouldn't that'd be fun for everyone, right? And then he ultimately gets the interim job, and we get to see what it looks like with Bobby Petrino back in our lives. And it turns out he's just going to lose all the close games that Sam Pittman lost, and that was fine. But we still got sunglasses. We still got him blowing up at officials. We still got a Bobby P experience, albeit a different experience than the one that he went out on. But Bobby Petrino and Bill Belichick has certainly upped their price. I know that Hulu's no longer doing the doc and Jordan Hudson got in the way. Well, Jordan, get back on board because Bobby P is on board. And if we can't get that in our lives, then Bobby is going to feel really bad because he's trying to give us all the content in the world. And sometimes it's a great thing. And when others don't cooperate, it's not. It's not as good as it could be. So just get everybody on board. Let's make the documentary. Let's talk to the people at Netflix that are doing the SEC doc. Like, hey, just shift all your attention to Chapel Hill. Just do that. Who says no? Jordan Hudson.
I mean, yeah, that's always who says no. And, man, this is going to sound insane. Just hear me out because we've both been Robert Patrick apologists here. If they can make it to week 1 without killing each other, this might be kind of a smart move.
I don't think it's the worst move. He can still call an offense. He's not bad at this. It's just, what does it look like late in the game? Mm-hmm. Do you trust him to be able to have a 2-minute drive in those key spots? How much of that was Taylor Green? How much of that is Bobby Petrino? I think you could look at some of the running back usage at certain times and be a bit frustrated with that. And that certainly falls on the OC. But he's not bad at his job. There is a reason why this guy has gotten 3 consecutive power conference OC jobs. Okay. He could still do it. But man, I need that. I need that. The fact that those two are joining forces, we got, with this news, we got a step closer to perhaps having another version of Bobby Petrino as an interim coach. Is he, if we gave him truth serum, is he taking these jobs thinking, what are my possibilities to be the interim coach? And if he is, and it's not just for content, which I think this is, then you know what? That's good. What if he could just do that forever? He is the new Ed Odron. He's going to be an interim guy. That's okay. Maybe that's as good as it gets. Maybe it gets us a 2-year deal with him coaching at this level again. Probably not, but I can't rule it out at this point.
Yeah, I think, kind of to follow your point from earlier too, how does he end up in these spots? I think they're the only places that'll have him, right? It's desperation. Why would you ever take a big brand and associate them with Bobby Petrino at this point? Well, it's because we're desperate and our coach is on the hot seat and we don't have a ton of options, right? And so I think that Belichick is in that situation. However, I think that if UNC is going to bail on Belichick, they're not turning it over to Bobby Petrino because the exact same things that are wrong with Belichick are also wrong with Bobby Petrino.
Name one.
in terms of the bad press, in terms of thinking with a certain part of their anatomy. And so that being said, I don't
Their
really think
brain, Will. Their brain.
that exactly, yeah, the great mind. If you combine their brains, you have the greatest football coach of all time.
Yep.
But yeah, I think that, like I said, in terms of what UNC can get at this point in time, it's probably one of the better hires they've made, because like Arkansas's offense was good this year. Their defense was horrible. They were bad at everything else. But I think that ultimately, at least yardage wise, like that's not why they were losing games. So I think it's going to be an upgrade if they can make it to week 1. I think that's the key. If they can, without blowing up on each other or without somebody, I guess it would be Bobby P at that point getting sent home. So watch out, bottom half of the ACC. If they make it to week 1, you might have some big performances.
I also realize that the key caveat with this, we need Bobby on the sidelines. Bobby in the booth you're leaving too much to chance. I had too many of those bad angles during that Texas A&M season, wherein you can't get a shot of him and he's wearing his sunglasses and you can't read his lips. And all I want to do is just read his lips and watch him potentially blow up on his head coach or have his head coach blow up on him. That's all we're really here for. Maybe him chew out an official. This is the type of Robert Patrick. I almost said Bobby Patrick. That would be weird. Robert Patrick that we need in our lives. So fingers crossed that we get it. UNC probably going to win the ACC next year, you think?
I mean, I would say they can't get worse or more embarrassing, but they can. And that's kind of the beautiful part of it, is that again, for content guys, this is undefeated. I hope he continues to coach. I hope Nick Saban goes somewhere as a coordinator, as a content guy. But at the end of the day, like, this stuff doesn't happen. So Bobby is one of those last potential boomer coaches that you talked about. And those guys stick together.
True. They do. They definitely will. All right,
how about some Biff Bobby?
I don't know that those two would see eye to eye. But I won't rule it out. Bobby is the next OC at Michigan. He takes the UNC job and then spurns Bill. Oh my God, Jordan Hudson was go scorched earth. Can you imagine all the Adobe Photoshop that she would put together, just ripping Robert Patrick? And how
she's going to drop an album at some point, bro. Watch out.
How about like an AI diss track?
Yes, she would be an AI diss track fiend, dude.
Yeah, she would. She'd be really good. All right, little housekeeping. We will not record again until Monday, December 29th. So we will preview all the quarterfinal matchups of the college football playoff, but we will not have another pod this weekend. So I know that we will be on a different type of schedule. I said that last pod as well. Different weird schedule moving forward. Just refresh your podcast feed wherever you get it and stay up to date with us. And I'll try and make sure that everybody knows when a pod is coming out. Please leave us a 5-star review. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch every episode of the Started Down South podcast. Follow us on Twitter at the SDS Pod, at South Down South, at TJ Rivera, at Ghost Heart. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.